Data versus doubt. Progress versus politics is the last episode of the series here on BBC Two. It's Big Oil versus the world.
What do you do when you learn the product you make threatens the entire planet?
ExxonMobil provides an essential component of modern society: affordable, reliable, and abundant energy.
They were actually making eerily accurate predictions about how high the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere would be.
There are massive fracking booms happening in Texas, North Dakota, Pennsylvania.
ExxonMobil is making a bet here on natural gas.
America is at the beginning of a great natural gas boom.
Did it turn out we had it wrong? Absolutely. What we learned about methane emissions is very, very scary.
Methane is harming every single person and every animal and everything on this planet.
Global warming, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
They knew that eventually policymakers were going to catch up and take actions that would put their business in jeopardy. So what do? Delay, distract, and deflect.
I certainly didn't grow up questioning fossil fuels or thinking about where energy came from. It was just 1950s USA. Everything was automatic and wonderful.
Soon, traffic will flow smoothly in, around, and between every major city and town in America.
Fossil fuels were driving what we call Western civilization. And still today, I value what fossil fuels have done for the world.
This is the road to prosperity.
I was proud to be working years later in the oil and gas industry. But we each have to make our own decisions, decide what to do with our lives. And when you change course, you change course.
Four decades ago, a young engineer called Tony Ingraffia joined a government task force searching for ways to access new sources of oil and gas.
It was being driven partly by this patriotic fervor. We don't want to be beholden to the Middle East. Right? U.S. oil production and natural gas production had just fallen off, right off the end of the table. We're going to work really hard to make sure that the U.S. always has its own supply of fossil fuels. What's not to like?
Their search led them to shale rock.
Even in this small piece of Marcellus Shale, there is stored methane, which becomes natural gas when it's produced. And if one were to estimate the total amount of methane, thousands of square miles under all these states, it's many, many trillions of cubic feet of natural gas.
But nobody had thought about spending a lot of money trying to get oil and gas out of shale. And most people in the industry, the vast majority of the people in the industry, said it couldn't be done. We did a lot of computer modeling and concluded that it was certainly possible.
After years of further research, the industry perfected a method of fracturing rock and horizontal drilling. Fracking.
People realized then that there was this enormous untapped resource. We've unlocked the keys to the kingdom.
Once fracking became cost-effective, Wall Street took note.
Most people in the oil and gas industry, most reporters like myself that were covering it, thought that oil and gas in the United States was over. We had found all the good reserves, we had drilled all the big wells, and shale changed all that. It was unexpected, it was dramatic, and it was lubricated by billions and billions of dollars coming out of Wall Street.
Thanks to record-breaking U.S. production, natural gas will continue to be a bargain. At Chesapeake Energy, we explore for American natural gas.
The leader of the fracking boom was Chesapeake Energy's Aubrey McClendon.
Far less than many other
Aubrey McClendon was a great visionary. He was one of the best natural speakers I'd ever seen.
CEO of Chesapeake Energy, we welcome you, Mr. McClendon. Whenever you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's one message I'd like to effectively communicate today, it's that America is at the beginning of a great natural gas boom. And this boom can largely...
He believed that natural gas was the fuel of the future, and he called it that all the time.
For clean electricity, natural gas is the answer. Just remember, pollution is no bargain, natural gas is.
At the time, most of the world's power was generated by coal, which was sending greenhouse gas emissions to record levels. McClendon argued that gas was better for the planet because it released less CO2.
He said, well, what do you think? He said, do we need an association or an organization just focused on the gas opportunities out there? So we started the Clean Skies Foundation. It was just doing everything we possibly could to get out the message.
What if America had its own clean energy? Abundant and available for the next century or more, and possibly indefinitely.
The fossil fuel industry tries to make this argument that we can be part of the solution.
A world of good.
We can be a force for good on climate, that we'll go out and we'll drill the natural gas, which is going to help us lower our emissions.
Doing a world of good for our economy, energy security, and our irreplaceable planet Earth.
And then all of a sudden, Aubrey McClendon, he starts courting probably the most prominent environmentalist in the country, Carl Pope, at the Sierra Club.
And we have Carl Pope, the executive director of the Sierra Club, who is a giant in the environmental movement.
Aubrey McClendon's Chesapeake Energy secretly donated $26 million to the Sierra Club, America's most influential environmental organization.
Well, we were working with Chesapeake to kill coal, and they were providing us with financial support. The concept that we were trying to convey was to say, eventually we have to be off all fossil fuels, but we have to get off coal first, oil second, and gas third. So we have the opportunity to replace a very dirty fossil fuel coal with a much cleaner fossil fuel natural gas for the next 20 or 30 years.
The gas industry had gained a powerful friend in the environmental movement. It was an alliance Carl Pope would later come to regret.
The natural gas industry, the gas industry, but they've trained me to call it the natural gas industry, nothing natural about it. I didn't understand how strong they were. I thought the big player was oil. I thought gas was kind of a junior cousin. Gas turns out to have an awful lot of political strength. And Americans had been more fully sold on the myth that gas was green. And I didn't realize how deeply that had sunk into people's brains, and probably mine.
Several other major environmental organizations went on to back natural gas expansion. Aubrey McClendon would die in a car accident in 2016. But by then, his campaign to sell gas as a climate solution had changed the world.
It's sort of amazing that there was this guy in Oklahoma City who helped really shift the whole national dialogue about climate and about fossil fuels. And just at a time when a lot of scientists were sort of looking at this and saying, we really need to start weaning off fossil fuels. And in doing so, he locks in the United States onto natural gas for the next generation.
There are massive fracking booms happening in Texas, North Dakota, Pennsylvania. It's much of the middle of this country.
It's led to unprecedented expansion in towns from Cotulla to Beeville.
The oil fields fueling a red-hot energy boom.
Tens of thousands of fracked wells were now appearing across America and the world. The boom attracted the interest of one of the world's largest oil companies.
X certainly marks the spot. ExxonMobil announcing it is buying XTO Energy, and it's a $41 billion deal, including some...
ExxonMobil is making a bet here on natural gas.
Overnight, ExxonMobil became America's largest gas producer. Da-Long Chang was an ExxonMobil engineer who worked on the company's fracking operations.
My peers, when they were recruiting me, they knew my concerns about climate change. They told me that ExxonMobil was the largest non-state energy company in the world. And even though oil and gas had been its bread and butter, ExxonMobil was going to be part of the energy transition over my career. And I believed them. They talked about the excitement of having gas be a bridge fuel to the future of energy.
I think one of the biggest challenges that the world is facing today is to develop all the energy we need in an environmentally friendly way.
The fact that natural gas was much cleaner burning than coal, that it produced half the carbon dioxide emissions of coal, those are very appealing to me.
But Chang also knew there was a major problem with gas if it's allowed to leak.
Natural gas is primarily methane, and methane, when it's leaked out into the atmosphere, can have orders of magnitude more global warming impact than carbon dioxide. Methane gas can have an impact of more than 80 times the impact of carbon dioxide. But the reason why this is so important is because we only have a couple of decades to avert runaway climate change.
Chang worried that the tens of thousands of new fracking operations across the globe could be leaking massive amounts of methane, turbocharging the climate crisis.
It's commonly known among engineers that all gases leak, and that if you don't take measures to check for leaks, and if you don't take measures to prevent those leaks, then the assumption is that you're guilty until proven innocent. RA felt that having many unconventional methane gas wells was a ticking time bomb for methane gas leaks. The more engineering infrastructure, the more wells and the more pipes, the more potential there is for leakage. When they were marketing natural gas as clean energy, they were fixated on the idea that natural gas, when burned, produces half the carbon dioxide emissions of coal. But without measurement devices to verify that you're not significantly leaking, you can't be sure that your natural gas is actually giving you less of a global warming impact than coal. There wasn't much appetite for management to measure methane leakage because if they found out there was a problem, they would have to do something about it.
At the time, ExxonMobil and others in the industry said they were working to reduce methane emissions. But on the ground, some in the environmental community were documenting widespread leaks.
I am hunting for methane that is escaping from oil and gas facilities because that's what I do. I'm a methane hunter.
Sharon Wilson worked at an environmental watchdog group investigating methane emissions.
This is an optical gas imaging camera, and it makes the invisible methane and volatile organic compounds from oil and gas facilities, it makes those visible. All of these pieces of equipment have got leaks. There's a lot of methane going off the flare. This is just a really, really dirty site. These emissions, what's coming out of oil and gas sites, the fact that it's invisible has helped them be able to expand and help them maintain that narrative of being clean, and when that is not the case. The tanks are venting. It started with local concerns, but then when I realized what a powerful actor methane is, I realized that it's a global problem. We need to move about where that telephone pole is. It was hard to imagine at first how much gas is releasing from these sites, from everywhere, and how many ways that they release gas, all the way from the drilling all the way until it ends up at a power plant.
She kept sending her findings to regulators and the press.
It's just disbelief that you can show someone video after video, proof after proof after proof, and they still do nothing. I sure can't compete with the oil and gas industry PR budget that they use to pump propaganda at us.
Wilson gathered evidence from hundreds of sites, including some operated by ExxonMobil. In a statement, ExxonMobil said it's been an industry leader in the effort to reduce methane emissions and has been using advanced technology to detect leaks.
What is happening in the United States, particularly in Texas, it's affecting people all around the globe, because methane is harming every single person and every animal and everything on this planet.
As Sharon Wilson was sounding the alarm, a growing number of engineers and scientists were waking up to the dangers of methane leaks, including the man who'd helped pioneer the process of fracking.
I became very much more concerned about climate change when I realized what shale gas and oil was going to unleash. That's the right word, unleash. This is trite. Unleash a tsunami of oil and gas. Yes, that's what it did. That's when I started feeling contradictory regret and pride. Pride that we had done good engineering work to help somebody eventually figure out how to do it. Regret that we had helped somebody figure out how to do it.
By now, Tony Ingraffia was a civil engineering professor at Cornell University and had spent years advising oil and gas companies. In 2011, he and colleagues published a critical report on the climate impact of fracking.
We spent 2 years doing the research, published a paper in a prestigious journal, and what Bob Howarth and I locked onto was this very crucial point, which is it's not just CO2 that's driving climate change. It's also methane.
We're the first people to really try to cumulatively look at these methane emissions from shale gas. It happens in all these various steps. This is what we think the methane emissions look like. If the leakage rate of the natural gas is of the neighborhood of 3%, then it's as bad for the climate as burning coal. What we were suggesting is that from the time you really start drilling all the way through to final consumer, some percentage, 3.5, 4, 5% of the gas that's produced is emitted unburned to the atmosphere.
The report was the first to contradict the narrative that natural gas from fracking was a climate solution.
The reaction to the paper was disturbing. I had never been a co-author of a paper that created a political firestorm and a scientific firestorm. At first we were pilloried, then we were ignored. I can understand people saying to me, "You're a traitor. You took their money for 25 years. You did their research, and now you're saying stop." Yeah, okay, I am. We had to endure a lot of personal attacks for no good reason. Hurts. Some of those people were good friends and won't talk to me anymore. My colleague Bob Howarth lost research funding.
The pushback from industry and from academics who may or may not have some tie to the industry, though in many cases they did, was strong. The basic discussion was methane emissions couldn't possibly be as high as we said. Well, this is a screenshot of an ad from Google that we took after our paper came out in 2011. The American Natural Gas Alliance, ANGA, paid for a Google ad that was up there for 22 months before they pulled it down. They discover in the eyes of the American Natural Gas Alliance that I'm a fraud. The fossil fuel industry has a history of doing what they need to protect their interests. And you know, they can be ruthless. That's a fact.
The Cornell professors were criticized by other universities, including the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. That year, the influential MIT Energy Initiative published a study on the future of natural gas, mainly funded by Aubrey McClendon's Clean Skies Foundation.
The Future Natural Gas study at MIT, I think we were ahead of the curve in talking about the forthcoming shale gas revolution. Methane emissions are a very important greenhouse gas that needs to be addressed. It's just that methane emissions from the oil and gas industry are actually a minority of methane emissions. Fortunately, in contrast to carbon dioxide, methane has a relatively short lifetime in the atmosphere. That doesn't mean one should ignore it. It means that one better eliminate new emissions.
The study promoted gas as a bridge fuel to a lower carbon future. It also criticized the Cornell methane report as unsubstantiated. Ernest Moniz insists industry funding did not influence these conclusions.
The point is, we always believe in transparency, and so that's, yeah.
The funding was part of a wider strategy by the fossil fuel industry. By 2012, oil and gas companies were pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into departments at prestigious academic institutions across America.
The very research centers that we assume to be independent are being funded by the very industry that they're supposed to be critically investigating. This high-profile MIT report trumpets the alleged benefits of methane gas and fracking while downplaying their downsides. It has laid the intellectual groundwork for the reliant on methane gas as a bridge fuel. The problem is, these are, to a letter, the talking points of the fossil fuel industry.
Would you be happy to talk about generally who funded the MIT Energy Initiative, not necessarily that report?
Let's just end the interview, okay? I mean, if you want to paint that as some kind of black spot, well, go ahead. Ridiculous, totally ridiculous. Look at the output. not the input. It's very disappointing, to be perfectly honest.
Moniz would become Energy Secretary in Barack Obama's second term, where he helped advocate for the natural gas boom. Bolstered by the MIT study, the industry narrative on natural gas took hold in Washington. It became part of President Obama's 2012 State of the Union address, where he unveiled his new energy policy.
There's this great irony of the Obama administration. He comes in promising to be the climate president. He's going to address these issues. He really positions himself as, I'm going after oil and gas. We're really going to rein them in.
The President of the United States.
But by 2012, he's standing up there at a State of the Union talking about how great natural gas is.
We have a supply of natural gas that can last America nearly 100 years. And my administration will take every possible action to safely develop this energy.
When Obama said we had 100 years of natural gas, we panicked because we knew the climate was changing so fast. Instead of helping the public awareness of the harm and what was happening, they just glossed over all of that, and everyone became super excited about this cheap, clean energy that was going to last 100 years. It's maddening.
Because America will develop this resource without putting the health and safety of our citizens at risk.
We didn't take the alternative path of drastically increasing investment in renewables.
Thank you. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
It should have happened in the Obama years. And we've exacerbated the climate change problem for 10 years when we could have been diminishing it.
Doing something for the first time, taking advantage of this new resource, you don't always know what you don't know. And over time, what we learned about methane emissions as it relates to natural gas is very, very scary. I think the Obama administration tried to be very conscious of all the implications of the shale revolution. Did it turn out we had it wrong? Absolutely. But at the time, we didn't know that it was wrong, and it's not like we didn't have some of the best scientific minds in the country working on that.
I'm terrified that we're not going to do nearly enough fast enough.
The age of fossil fuels is far from over.
We've unleashed the whirlwind. It's not too late, but we lost the decades, and now we're playing catch up. What climate change means to me is looking in the eyes of my grandchildren and wondering what kind of hell they're going to pay.
All you need is one foot inside the door, and you'll never look back.
The rise and rise of the Norwegian oil industry.
Why would you turn down a well-paid job? Okay, let's do it.
B-14's blowing out.
This is the most oil-producing well in the world.
It's too late. We've lost control.
Be careful.
The weather, is it very unusual?
Mayday, mayday.
Norwegian drama, State of Happiness. Coming soon to BBC 4 and iPlayer.
Megan, why don't you tell me everything? We had a good life. It was good, and then because of her, it's become this.
A deranged woman kidnapped my baby and nearly killed him.
Agatha Firefall is committed and very cunning. She'll never stop.
What kind of story are you going to tell about Agatha?
One that'll change everything.
The Secret She Keeps starts Saturday at 9:15 on BBC.